I think we should start now. Right, Akshay?
Yeah, I think we can start now.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining, everyone. As you all know that we create a lot of security videos. So before we start, I wanted to make sure that you all know and completely understand the reason why we are doing all this. So we want to make sure that everyone and all of the people who is trying to study more and more around information security, data security, we are trying to help them free of cost. We are not charging anything, we are not getting any revenue out of these videos. We are just trying to help people who are trying to educate themselves. That is the goal here. Okay. And when we want you to participate, we want your contribution in that goal. Okay, because see, this is not something that we are doing for ourselves. We have to understand this. We are doing this for people who want to pursue their careers in this domain. Okay, so we have to be very responsible in taking this discussion to a fruitful level where people can get some benefit and value out of this. Okay, so that is what I wanted to make sure. I set the platform clearly on that front. So I will mute you, Mayank, for now. Maybe yeah, you can speak later. Okay. So I wanted to quickly introduce Akshay before we start. Okay, Akshay, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, folks, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Like said, that the agenda of sessions like this is mostly so that all of us can come together, sit together, just have like a general discussion on things, clear your doubts, get our doubts cleared here, and like a joint effort which is aimed towards getting to know the topics and domain as information security practitioners, enthusiasts, or people who want to get themselves into information security in general. I am Akshay Dixit. I am the CTO and founder of a company called as Anzen Technologies. What this firm is about, it's a consulting and solutioning firm for services, risk management, and compliance. Services we render, range from governance services to technical services like assessments, technical assessments, information security assessments for applications, mobiles, networks, etc. Our USP is incident management and response, where we are just kind of consulting to our clients, providing them protection against external threats like malwares, ransomwares, and breaches in general. So yeah, I think that's pretty much about myself. I think, Love, we can start here.
Yeah, so we can start the Q&A session, and anyone who wants to add, they can either speak, to elaborate the answer that we are providing here, because again we are two people, so we'll try to manage. If you want to have any inputs, you can, feel free to do so. So who would like to opt in and ask the first question here? Go for it.
Hello, Love and Akshay. This is Shivkan.
Hi, Shivka.
Hi. I just want to ask one question related to ISMS policies. Like
Okay.
in ISMS, we have lots of the policies like password management, clean desk policy, and business continuity. Lots of policies, but the end user does not have access of these policies. So, which policy we can make it public to create the awareness directly or for the end users, and how we can do it?
Okay, so if I understand correctly, I'll just reiterate your question. I think what you're saying is ki, whatever policies the company has which are related to ISML,
Yes.
uh, should we make them accessible to all end employees? And if so, what is the channel? Am I right in saying that?
Right, right. But like all policies, we can't share because most of the policies are internal and confidential. We can't make it public to every employee. We can provide only need to know basis.
Okay, so for example, can you tell me what policy do you feel is confidential and should not be revealed to an employee, a regular employee?
Like cryptography policy and business continuity policy or backup policy. Because end user, I don't think so. Is it relevant to know what is the crypto encryption is going on? Or
Okay,
how
so
the
right, so you're kind of correct in what you're trying to say. I think your concern is valid. Let me just give you a couple of points here that will get you to think. What I am saying, what I think at this point is that there has to be a distinction between what we call a policy and what we call a procedure. So a policy would typically state that there should be data residing on sensitive data residing on company infrastructure should be encrypted. Now that is a policy, right? Now how would you have that data for how would that encryption go? How would you go about encrypting it? How would you go about storing it? What will be the media? How and anything and everything then falls under procedures and sub procedures. Now there are SOPs, there are procedures. Now a procedure would still be one level down to how you are implementing that in a technical fashion. Even a further deep down would be a typical operating procedure that lies only with the cryptography information security team that is dealing with actually implementing that. So from that standpoint, the policies can be published on intranet and made available for the people to see that. And the procedures, sub procedures, and the SOPs are something which lies with the specific teams.
Okay. Akshay, you want to add anything before I add my inputs?
Please, carry on.
Okay, perfect. So, very good question. First of all, thank you for asking that. It's a good start, I would say, for this particular Q&A session.
Yeah.
Two things I would add here. What Akshay has already added. Most of it he has covered. But Shivkant, I think it depends upon organization to organization also, because let's say if I'm doing some trades, okay, and I'm doing a lot of transactional data, in that case it's a compliance that I have to make certain policies public, okay, otherwise the client would not trust, okay. So it does not mean that I have to make all the policies public, but things like where we can show that we are meeting the standards, certain policies I think can be made public without giving too much of details and inputs. Yes, it can, but again depends upon organization. It can't be a generic answer for anyone.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's more a matter of transparency here.
Yes.
But in my opinion, if you ask me, I think companies should make the policies public. It's because of the assurance that the end users and employees get that their company is sharing with them.
Yes.
It's obviously the responsibility of the employee to not reveal those policies outside. It's still a sensitive document, and an employee is person in the company. But yeah, how you're enforcing that policy, taking encryption as an example, I don't need to reveal which solution I'm using. I don't need to say what kind of algorithm is being used right now. I don't need to share the key storing mechanism with them, because
Yes.
that's pretty sensitive data that
Yeah.
should not be leaked at all. But yes, I should be able to tell my people that I have encryption in place. And that's a good thing to know, and that's a good thing to have.
I believe
I
certain.
think there was somebody
Yeah,
who
go on, go
was
on.
adding something. Somebody typed something. I would really request them to speak up if they have something. To
Okay,
add.
okay, yeah. I can see some chats. Would anyone like to add anything?
My network is not good right now.
We can't hear you, man.
Okay, okay, cool. I think we can speak out. Let me just check what was.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was Kaustubh who said that, I think we should make all the policies private and confidential to employees. The procedure and policies must be available to employees so that they would know the robust. No, I think procedure, I think, should still not be revealed, but yeah, policy can be, right? Yeah, so I think he's correcting himself. Yeah, so that's what he wanted to say. I think Kaustubh agrees with us over here, Love.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah.
So Luv and Akshay,
Yeah.
can we like create two different kind of document for like internal and confidential use only, and for other is for end user employee only?
Yes.
So, see, that's what I'm trying to say. Whatever you need for to be specific to you, you can make that as a part of standard operating procedure. Make it an SOP, because see, it doesn't make sense to have two policies when you're being audited, when you're being when your company grows. You can't tell people I have two set of different policies. There can't be duplicate policies existing. You can't have cryptography policy 1, cryptographic policy 2, and then you say that I share one with the employees and I don't share one second with the other. That does not look good. I'm not saying you can't do it. It's not illegal to do it, but that doesn't reflect good on you as a team or as a company. So it makes more sense that you have some procedural document in place with you, which is specific and internal to your team, and you consume it, and nobody can stop you from doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you want to establish yourself as a organization where you want to show that you are following certain things, for example, if I take context of a privacy policy, so things like privacy policies can be made public. It's fine.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So yes, there are things, and Satvinder, would you like to say something? Satvinder. Okay. Yeah. So Shivkant, I think you got the answer, right?
Yes, right. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question here. So somebody, Mr. Praveen, I think is asking here that how long can a risk acceptance be considered? Praveen, if you can, if you are audible, you can come forward and ask your question, so we can address it in a more proper sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So basically, risk when a risk without any control, where business accepts to cost or some other factors, right? So
Yes.
that might be raised as a proactive measure for some duration as per the business. It is a continuous risk. So till how long we need to keep on going accepting that risk?
Okay, so you're asking, I'll again, reiterate your question so that if people couldn't understand, they'll know. I think what he's trying to ask here is that, we have the provision of risk acceptance, where we accept a risk that comes against, a certain point against some person, and, there is something which stops an organization or a team or a department from mitigating that risk. So they accept that risk, but it's still a risk. It's still there. It's still evident and present. And so for how long should we accept a risk? So is that correct? Am I correct in understanding your question? Did I leave something?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll address this from a very basic sense. So when we talk about risk acceptance, the very first thing you have to understand about risk acceptance is that we do not accept any risk. It's not that, just because you have, so I'll for anybody who does not know, what happens is when we identify a risk against a control, whoever is the person responsible for mitigating that risk, we inform that person as a part of risk management that there is a risk that is open against you or against an asset or against an application which is in your name, which is under your ownership, and it's your responsibility to mitigate it. So we duly inform them to please mitigate the risk. Now, should they come to us and say that, for reasons, for business reasons, for some reason or the other, I will not be able to do it. That is where the concept of risk acceptance comes into picture, where they may say that, we accept the fact that this risk is lying with us, and we are okay with the consequences that arise from this risk being exploited or from this risk becoming true. And that is what is risk acceptance. Now, from an operational or practical level, what happens is that, there is a standard, every organization would typically have a form or a procedure or a process where they mention that, why they want to take an acceptance against the risk. There is a timeline that is defined, till which the risk will be accepted. So they may say that, I am accepting the risk for the next 20 days because I have certain things that are in place. After I have taken care of those things, in the next 20 days, I will be in a position to actually close that risk or mitigate that risk or treat that risk for that matter. So you put it against, you take the approval of, their senior person or senior management or senior authority of that department or that team in general. And that is how you keep the risk in risk acceptance mode. It stays in that mode till the time the risk acceptance they have seeked for. Once that time expires, the status of the risk from accepted changes back to being open. So it goes back to your system of risk management.
Yes.
Then you go back to asking them that, this risk is again open.
Yeah.
And now what are you doing as you have committed?
Right.
So first part of your question is that, it does not stay indefinite. You have to take a time period from them. And it cannot be something, something like, 1 year or 10 years. That's not possible. We, as practitioners, we do not give them that much leeway. It usually has to be a justified time period. That is one. The important part about risk acceptance is that you do not provide risk acceptance to any and every request for a risk acceptance that comes along. Because let's say I am an auditee, there are 10 risks that are open, risks or sub-risks that are open against me. And let's say you are an information security internal or external auditor, and you come to me and you tell me that, Akshay, there are 10 risks that are open to you. Now, the easiest thing for me to do is say that, give me an acceptance for these 10 risks. And, procedurally, you'll give me that acceptance and then I'll be fine. And then when my expiry comes, I'll say, oh, please give me an extension. I'll take an extension. So we don't do that. There has to be a very strong justification against the risk that is being accepted. Most of the times, the reasons have to be business justified. It cannot be like, I don't have manpower, so I'm not able to do it, or I don't have this. Usually these things come from upper management, where they have upper management support into telling them that, this risk could be accepted for an accepted period of time, and post that we will treat this risk. And you have to also take a justification of what they will do once the acceptance period gets over. So they have to give a justification of the plan as well. They can't say that, I'll think about it when that acceptance period gets over. So I think with those in place, you can take it. Typically, the maximum period varies from organization to organization. I have seen, some very justified risk acceptance on per month, and I have seen risk acceptance for as small as 10 days, 15 days as well. Does that help you?
Yes. So in case of acceptance period is completed and business is continuously keep on going on the extension. So
right.
as an audit, What should we
No,
do?
you have to you have to stop giving them extensions. It remains open. So when it remains, if you do not give an acceptance to a risk, the risk will remain open. If the risk remains open, they are still in the loop of having a risk open against them. That reflects in your dashboards, that reflects in your risk appetite, that reflects in your audits. And the whole point of having a risk management is that time over time the risk ages. So that it shows in your risk aging, it shows the owner, the team reflects in the person who has not closed that risk over this big period of time. And eventually actions are taken, because then you have escalations again against open risks. So those things come into picture. So then they are liable, then they are responsible. They can't force you to accept a risk. That is my whole point.
Okay, cool.
Okay. The timelines, I would like to just add one thing here. Akshay did it very well. The timelines may vary depending upon n number of factors. It could be budget, it could be some other constraints that the business is going through, because of which the risk is actually accepted and not been taken care of and mitigated. So it actually depends upon the organization. But as Akshay mentioned, it has to be critically documented, and somebody is not muted. Okay, so it has to be documented, and it has to be made sure that we understand who has the ownership of that risk, and what is being done for that particular risk. So that is really important. I am getting a lot of background noise. Hang on there. Okay. So does that answer the question, or shall we take an example of this to make you more clear?
I think that was explanatory. It was
Okay.
good.
Okay. We can move to next then. Okay.
Okay. So there is next question. Prerequisite list of evidences that we should ask to the client before starting the audit walkthrough. This has been asked by Kaustubh. Kaustubh, if you can explain your question in a better way, if you can elaborate on this rather, so we can address this.
Kaustubh, you have to unmute yourself, man. Network issue, huh? Okay. Okay, he is having network issues.
Okay, fine. So I think, Luv, you will
So
take this up, and I can
yeah.
later.
What is he asking? He's asking a list of
The
documents.
question
huh?
is, what are the prerequisite list of evidences that we should ask any client before starting the audit?
So ISO 27001 has a list of mandatory documents that should be prepared. Okay. So before the audit, you can obviously check whether the client has any of those documents or not. So I have created, I think, not less than 10 to 15 videos on what are these documents and what do you have to find out in these particular documents. What are the things that you should look for. So I think, Kaustubh, we can't answer that shortly in this particular video. But yes, you are right. The list of mandatory documents is already there. Okay. So whenever you go for any audit, you should ask for those particular list of documents so that the client can provide if they have. Okay. I don't know whether it's okay. Thank you. What is the next one?
Yeah, let me just check. Hold on. Okay, the next question is, what are the key points that we should consider while doing an internal audit in the cloud standpoint? What are applicable standards in ISO 27001? Okay, I'm not too much clear on what this question means. Santosh has asked this question. Can Santosh quickly explain the question a little bit?
Santosh, are you audible?
If not, then maybe we can maybe address this later when Santosh comes online. We can probably.
Yeah, Santosh, are you there? Don't know.
Okay, so let's move on to the next till then, and we'll put a pin on this. Okay.
Akshay, let me answer that one. Akshay, let me answer that one.
Yeah, sure.
Can you repeat
Sure.
that? Because I don't have chat in front of me.
Let me just pull that up because it's a window here. It says, wait. What are the key points we should consider while we are doing internal auditing in the cloud standpoint, and what are applicable standards in ISO 27001?
Okay, so there are two. Okay, so internal audit, external audit, these are two different concepts. I think I have made some videos around it. You should watch, Santosh, so that you can have better clarity around that. How it differentiates from internal one to external one, that is entirely different. But when you are asking it in terms of cloud, there are n number of compliances which you need to have whenever you go for any cloud deployment. There are n number of things that you should look out for. For example, what is the SLA of that cloud environment in which you are going through, and what are the different offerings? Is the service provider compliant? For example, if you, because nowadays there are n number of service providers when you go for cloud deployment, so there are n number of things that you have to look out for. First of all, you have to make sure that the service provider is compliant with all the different compliances in terms of ISO 27001, in terms of other security standards or not. So the service provider has to make sure that they establish this and they give you all those documents, because I have done that in the past, and it has to go through n number of checks. We can't tell you all the steps in this video, but yes, you are right. Not from internal audit point of view, I think whenever you go for any cloud deployment, you have to make sure that the vendor that you are choosing is meeting certain criteria, and it depends upon business to business how critical that criteria is, and it's not a single shot answer for any business. But yes, there are n number of things involved here in terms of compliance, in terms of privacy, in terms of storing your data, in terms of how the data movement will happen, in terms of backup. There are n number of things over there, Santosh. So you have to be very cautious, especially for the cloud environment, because you have asked this question. So yes, it is there. Okay. Yeah, go on.
Okay, I'll add a couple of things here. See, if you're talking about auditing a cloud environment, a couple of things that you have to make sure is so most of the points when we're talking about any kind of an audit, it technical, if you're asking about it from a technical control perspective, I would say, AAA, the authentication, authorization, and accountability are three things that we have to consider. If you talk, most of the things that you talk about is that, whether the data you have from an auditor perspective, you have to make sure the data flow is proper. You have to check where the data is flowing. You have to check for vulnerable points. From a data environment perspective, you have to check, expanding on what Luv said. He said that you have to make sure that the service provider is compliant. So you have to make sure that where are your data centers located, right? Then you have to check for from an infrastructure perspective, you have to make sure that there is a vulnerability management or a patch management process in place for the cloud environment that's happening. Now, this is all against the service provider that is doing it for you.
Yes.
So one of the reasons I wanted to address this, I did not want to address this question, is because we do not know whether they are talking about application or data that is being hosted on a cloud environment, because then you have to talk about do you have are they from the are they then even the console with which you log in into your cloud or deploy into your cloud also comes into picture.
Yes.
Then things like multi-factor authentication come into picture.
Yeah.
Then single tenant or multi-tenant, all those concepts come into picture. So we have to then we also talk about audit trails and audit logs, whether they are maintaining logs, whether they are providing access to you to logs for your instance that are being deployed, how is isolation or tenancy happening in their particular environment or whatever service they're offering. So it depends, it differs. You will find these questions you can come up is when they talk to you about their services, you can come up with a couple of questions. There are frameworks and guidelines defined by NIST and other regulatory body framework bodies that offer you some checklist, but it's mostly a question and answer based thing, because then it's an evidence based thing. You ask them and they have to provide you evidence for it. So this is less of a technical and more of a assurance and a compliance thing, where you demand certain certificates and proofs of certain things from your cloud service provider.
Yeah.
This is at least from what I can gather from the question.
Yeah. And again, it depends upon a lot of things. For example, whether, as Akshay mentioned, whether you are doing patch management, whether vendor is doing patch management, who exactly has. So when I tried to bifurcate this, the same question came to my mind also, Akshay, one day. So if I drill down from a conceptual point of view, I'll tell you, we have to drill down the responsibilities. What is my responsibility? What is vendor's responsibility? We have to drill down these two things whenever anything comes with cloud security, because otherwise, if you don't have this defined, these two, you'll have a mess and nothing will work. Yeah, go on. I think Santosh wanted to add something. I think he unmuted it himself, then he went to mute again. Okay. Maybe we can take the next question then. Okay. Is it clear? Is it clear with you, Santosh? Shall we move on? Okay. I think you should move on. I think he's facing some issues. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question here that says, okay, wait. Yeah, so I would like, I'm sorry, yeah. When collecting evidence from the SPOC of departments which are in scope, how can we make sure that we have collected the right evidence? Yeah, that's a pretty good question here. So what we're talking about here is that how can you ensure the integrity of the evidence that is being showcased to you? I think this has again been asked by Kaustubh himself.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty straightforward one. I mean, you do not take things as they are. You do not take them on face value. If somebody is telling you that you review the evidence. I mean, it's as simple as that. If you say that do you have a vulnerability management in place, and they say yes we do, and they show you a vulnerability calendar of an assessment going on, then you should ask them for few couple of reports of the last assessment that was done. You review the report and you ask them for evidence that actually the findings have been closed. As an auditor, you have the right to demand as much evidence as you need, and they have to, your client or your team or your auditee is responsible for providing you for the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The next question, Luv, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, one more thing in terms of making sure that all the logs and everything is proper. You should have log management servers where you can actually find out the when the log happened and what was the transaction of that particular log. People do that. So if you have log management servers, if you have time servers clearly defined in your environment, then you won't face a lot of issue. But I have seen companies who do not have such servers maintained, and in those environments it's kind of difficult to make these evidences. Okay. Yeah, go on.
Not.
Yeah, Kaustubh wanted to say something? Okay. He's gone to mute again. Go on, Akshay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So somebody asked, can I ask AWS related question? Yeah, man, you can. I mean, we are not AWS experts here. But yes, if we do have an understanding, we will definitely answer your question. There is a question that says assets and services classification, how to start it. Okay. So if I'm understanding this correctly, it means that, assets and services classification, how to start. So are you trying to ask how do we start an asset classification? Because classification comes in a couple of places. I mean, asset classification comes in picture when we're doing data classification as well. Is this asset classification related to risk management? If Mohammed, you can just ask your question again. I think we'll be able to.
Can you speak, Mohammed? Not sure, man.
I think people are just asking questions and then leaving.
Okay. So I think we should answer it, Akshay. What was it? How to classify the assets?
The question is, how to start an asset and service classification.
Okay. So would you like to answer it or I shall go for it?
Yeah, you can carry on. I'll join you.
Okay. So whenever you talk about asset classification, I think first of all you need to understand the customer environment. What are the different processes that the customer is flowing, through? What, as Akshay mentioned just 5 minutes ago, how is the data flowing from here to there? What kind of documents are being prepared? What kind of work is being getting on? Okay. From those particular things, you need to go back and reverse engineer. Then you will understand the critical assets. Because for some companies, critical assets would be different. For some companies, critical assets would be entirely different. So you need to understand whether they have a person dependency on which a single person is handling all the work, and if that person goes away, the entire process will shut down, or they have a single server where the entire load is being carried by a single server, and if that server shuts down, the entire process will be killed. So it depends upon scenario to scenario. But yes, you have to understand the process first. Once you understand the process, the assets can be defined into persons, they can be defined into the hardware, it can be a software, it can be n number of things, man. So first of all, you have to understand the data flow and the process, what is happening on their end. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So from a classification, see, any kind, there is no such thing as a right way of a classification or a wrong way of classification.
Right.
So
Right.
if you go for frameworks of asset classification, you will find couple of people, distinguishing in terms of tangible, intangible assets.
Yes.
Then they talk about fixed assets. Then, from an ISO or an ISMS perspective, anything and everything is an asset.
Right.
Even my employee is an asset to me. Even
Yes.
my laptop is an asset to me.
Yeah.
So it differs. You have to define what an asset is to you.
Yeah.
You have to define strategies around asset. So you can say that, I will define functionally, or I will define from a criticality perspective. So I will call everybody an asset. Now, if I would go for an ISMS, I would call everybody an asset. Even a team is an asset to me. Even an employee is an asset to me. Now, I will categorize those assets into, what is tangible and what is intangible, and then I will go ahead. So you can, follow any framework for asset classification. You just have to make sure that, you pick something that is relevant and specifically, makes sense for you.
Yeah.
I think that makes more sense.
Right.
Had this question been more specific, I would have to answer, in a little bit more depth. But if you have to start, I will. Your starting point for defining any asset is, first of all, see what is an asset to you. So first of all, you say that, for any company, you would say that your documents are an asset to you, your employees are an asset to you, your infrastructure is an asset to you. then you start defining them, in terms of from a people, process, and technology. So you can distinguish between people, process, and technology, and you can say from a people perspective, this is my asset. From a process perspective, this is an asset, and from a technology perspective, this is an asset. Then you go ahead and defining them on criticality. That if you lose this asset, or if this asset is not accessible, how this is going to affect you. It is more into where you are going to use this asset classification in.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of identifying, doing this asset classification? Because even for a very small activity, I may need this asset classification and I may not use it again. So it kind of depends on what you are using it for and what is the end goal of this asset classification. Because you may call something an asset in one framework and not call it an asset in a different kind of a framework or setting. And it may differ in sense of criticality or how those assets are being consumed. So I think it kind of differs. But yeah, starting point is this could be a good starting point.
I would like to add one last thing before we conclude this one. What I would do is, first of all, I would understand the process. What exactly is happening in that particular process? What kind of elements are involved? Who all is involved? What kind of infrastructure equipment is involved? What kind of processes are involved? After understanding all these things, I should jot down a list of assets. Okay. And then I would define the priority. For example, which asset is more critical to this process? That is how I will start the asset, classification. Otherwise, what I will have is a blank register, because if I will not, note down all those assets involved in that particular process, at the end of the day, I won't have anything. So that's how you can start the asset classification. Yeah, go on, Akshay.
Okay. Cool. So I think the next question is from Gostub, and it says that I would like to do an ISMS LS certification, but ISO 27001 2013 standard is an old one. Is it right time to do this certification now, or should I wait for an update in the document? Also, kindly share how should I pursue this certification.
Okay. So I think he's trying to say something. Kaustubh?
Yeah,
Hi man, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you so much, Love, and you were being very helpful. Like, I have been following your group since past 2 years, since my masters, and your knowledge and whatever documents you share, I actually read them. I just make some time at my night to just read all those, and I make sure that I learn. So thank you so much, you and Akshay, for sharing all those documents and helping us. So, like, helping students like us who want to learn but who don't have a proper mechanism to learn. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for adding that, Kaustubh. I would like to add one more line there. I was kind of in a hibernate mode, especially after Corona hit, because I am kind of a very emotional person. So I do not go out when my mind is not right. So Akshay called me, I think a week or so before. He said, man, we have to get out. This is the time when we should collaborate more. So I think all these videos, all credit goes to Akshay, because I was hidden somewhere. I'll be honest with you. Yeah. Shivkant, would you like
Seems
to
to
say
be some
something?
disturbance. Guys, you need to mute yourselves because we can't really
Okay.
hear.
Okay. I think we should go on to the next one then. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the question was there, right? So he would like to do an ISO 27000 certification, but he's confused whether, it's an old one, and whether this is the right time to do the certification, or should he wait for a while to do it?
Yeah.
And if so, then how should he pursue with this?
Yeah. So I get asked this question a lot of times. First of all, I would say, what is the need of this certification? Are you changing jobs? Is somebody asking you for this certification? What exactly is the requirement? If you think that there is a requirement, absolutely go for it. Okay. I would not stop you. That's the first answer. The second thing is, knowledge is more important than getting a certificate. I would again say that. The third thing would be, if you will compare both the versions, 2005 and 2013, there is not a lot of difference. Okay, only some of the things have changed. Rest all the entire content is almost there. Okay, so I think created a video on this one as well. So if you'll go through on YouTube, you will get to know more. But there is not a lot of change. Okay, So that has to be kept in mind. Even if the standard would change, I don't think they will change it completely, where they'll add entirely some new frameworks and all. So I think ISMS, when we talk about as an umbrella of the information security governance and frameworks, so it holistically it will stay the same costume. I don't think there will be a lot of difference. So go for it. I would not say no.
Okay. Another thing, actually, my company is not asking me to go for ISO certification. It's just for self satisfaction that yes, I'm looking for this certification, and it will add some value to my resume. So that was the reason I'm looking for this certification.
Then I would not suggest you to go for this one, because there are n number of more certifications now, Kaustubh. So just study the market. There are n number of more things coming out these days. So make a good choice. That's what I would say to you as a good suggestion. You don't have to mandatorily go for a ISO 27001 certification if nobody is asking you to do that. Okay, just see whatever suits you best, right, Akshay?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't feel that 2013 in general is outdated. It's more like you have to get a sense of a certification. So if you're doing it from a knowledge purpose, I would say do it now.
Yeah.
You can just refresh yourself, because there are some changes and differences.
Yeah.
I think the concern arises from the fact that the previous one, I think it was 2005, right? It kind of went on a vulnerability based assessment, and this kind of became a process based assessment. You still do hold a value as an auditor. I don't think so. If you go to somebody and you say, I am 2013 certified and this is 2020, somebody would say that, this is invalid in general. But yes, if money is a constraint, if you think that, it's not specifically for a job purpose, then I think you should go ahead and do it. If you do not have a need immediately, then I think it makes more sense to just learn and understand the concept, and then go for certification when you actually feel like it makes sense for you.
Yeah.
I think that's the most reasonable thing anybody would do.
Yeah.
If you do not have a need for a certification, then knowledge you can gain without actually getting certified.
Yeah.
Certification is more like a stamp on that knowledge for people to know that you have that knowledge. There's a certifying body that says yes, he has that knowledge. That's it. So if you don't want to show it to anybody else, then I think it makes sense to just kind of leave it.
Satvinder, you wanted to say something?
Yes, sir. Hi, Akshay. Hi, Luv. So just
Hello.
I wanted to add science here. So to his question, I want to add that when I started my journey, I started following Love video, right? And I'm from a commerce background with zero technical knowledge. After following Love for 1.5, so Love, if you recall, we spoke in 2019,
Right.
and you said that if you are confident after attending my sessions and videos, then go for it. Else, start pursuing it once you are thorough with the knowledge.
Yes.
And I still, that valuable piece of advice not only saved my 54,000 rupees. I am much more confident in terms of knowledge. One.
Yeah.
Second, when I went for my certification, I was way ahead of my batch. So trainer appreciated that, I used to read and watch videos before a night. I know that this is a schedule for next day. And I was more confident because my concepts were clear. So generally what people, lack is that they, as you rightly said, that we don't need a certificate only. If you have a knowledge, that will make more sense. So having knowledge first and then certification make more sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Satvinder. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Kaustubh. Go on, Akshay. Next one.
Yeah. So the next one. Wait. A lot of questions have popped up since that time. Yeah. So the next question is from Pooja. It says that I have questions regarding BCP plan for current COVID-19 situations. What all points should we consider from organizational perspective, small as well as large organization, in view to ensure business continuity, as well as what points should be added in checklist, maybe COVID-19 checklist, Also, what point should be covered in compliance policy for such situation? So perfect. I think this is a perfect time. So what Love and me were planning is that maybe tomorrow or really soon we were planning to have a session specifically for BCP and incident management. A half an hour to 35 minutes session wherein I would explain what BCP is, not going into extreme depth, but yes, talking about BCP and incident management, and also addressing BCP and incident management both during the time of this COVID-19 situation, and how the scenarios have changed or what has been added and what is more relevant here. And then we can open up questions specific to BCP and incident management, I think, during that time. I think it makes more sense during them. If Pooja is here, what I would suggest is to be there in that session. That will be announced. And you could ask specific questions over there, and then we can obviously discuss specific audit points, checklist points of BCP and incident management. Does that make sense, Pooja?
Yes. Hi, Akshay. Good evening. Hi, Love.
Hi.
Hello.
So Pooja, if you have,
So, yes,
yeah,
yeah.
go on.
Yeah, so right, as Akshay said, so that session would be really helpful for us. So I'll bring up this again in that session.
Any specific
Okay.
questions you have which can't wait? Go for it.
Yeah, sure.
No,
Why
it's
not?
not like that. Actually, looking at the current situation, we all were not prepared for this. So now we see, one thing is, after we come out of this situation, surely we'll have policies, procedures, and everything in place. Right now, we don't know when it will get over. So right now, what we can do to ensure that the work is done properly, maybe the organization, should have discussions with their colleague for stress management and that kind of things. So I just wanted to discuss the points. Like maybe we can make a checklist now. What's there in our hand right now?
Yeah, so Pooja, I will be addressing these things. So if you're talking about BCP in general, BCP specific to COVID-19, that is something which is in my agenda. When we'll be having this session, it makes more sense for me to address everything in totality.
Yeah.
What I would request you is you to then ask, the next level questions on this, so that we can have a better, more interactive session on just BCP and incident management part of it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, completely.
It is not too far, Pooja. I think it will be tomorrow. Akshay is almost there.
I think it's going to be tomorrow evening or something. I just need to confirm my timings and get a consent on when people are more comfortable. I think if that works out, we can do this as soon as tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Because I
Okay.
think in the last video, Satvinder also brought this point in terms of business continuity.
Yeah.
So we spoke a lot. So that's where it stuck our mind to have a different session altogether, right, Satvinder?
Yeah. Sorry, network broke. I could not catch.
Okay.
No, we were discussing about. So there was a question regarding what to do in BCP when a COVID-19 situation arises. So what Love and I decided is that we are going to have an incident management and BCP session specifically, and also address the COVID-19 scenario in that. So I am having that as soon as tomorrow. So Love was just asking, does it make sense to have something like that?
Yeah.
That would be amazing. It's need of an hour.
Yeah. Sure.
So people have been coming to Love and me, a lot. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So there was about the stress management
Yeah.
perspective, and from manager for 15. We connect with their. The first thing we should the family well-being, and the safety of the employee. So that will make a better connect with the employee. Second is we should have some kind of fun activity going on. Maybe it's a small organization or SME, like just get a click with the family and send it to the company. And this short activities will bring team together, and people will not feel frustrated that my manager is only asking about the work, or they're only concerned about the productivity and everything.
Yeah. So very, very, very nicely said, and a great point. I wanted to cover it tomorrow, but since it is said out here, I would like to add here, even in these scenarios, even right now, there are companies who are having virtual tea breaks. So as teams are working, they connect over video conferencing. They make a cup of tea, they make a cup of coffee, and they sit in front of camera, with and talk to each other while they're sipping their coffee and having their, snacks. So people are having virtual tea and coffee breaks during these times so that, they can just connect and talk about non-work related matters as well as they would do in a typical, working scenario, go to a canteen, sit, around a table and talk to each other. So I think initiatives like this, really adds up to lowering the stress of being at home while working and handling, so many things and scenarios, and obviously the pressure and stress of the ongoing, pandemic.
Yeah. Thank you, Pooja.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I think let's go on to the next question. There is a question that says, I am handed over the security function of my organization. IS policy is defined and approved. Except this, nothing is there like asset classification, risk assessment, etc. How to start?
Who is this, Akshay?
Mohammed.
Mohammed, are you audible? Can you speak to us?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm available. How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm fine, great.
Go for it.
Yeah, Muhammad, if you can expand your question, that would be great.
Yeah, my question is basically the information security policy is there, it is approved, and except this, no processes defined like the incident management, the assets classification, the process classification, the risk management. So I want to ask what will be the approach to start and from where to start? I mean, what will be the strategy to start? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So,
Right?
is this about the entire organization, or you have been handed
Yeah.
over to a specific department?
No, it's for the entire organization, but we'll be starting it from the IT department, and then we'll move on to other departments as well.
I think Love, this is more about risk management. I think you can just talk about the whole ISMS thing in brief.
Yeah.
And
So,
from a very operational and practical point of view.
yeah. So Akshay rightly mentioned. First of all, as we mentioned, I think 20 minutes before, Mohammed, you have to understand what kind of processes are flowing in IT. Let me speak about IT only, because you said we'll start with IT. So what kind of processes you have? What is the environment? What kind of data is flowing? How the data is flowing? Where the data is residing? Things like that. There's n number of questions that you can ask. Okay. Asking questions would be the first thing that I would do. I would ask hundreds of questions and thousands of questions to 2 or 3 people, and I'll try to make their lives miserable by asking questions. That's what I would do, because as the more and more questions you will ask, the more and more you will get to know things. Right, Akshay? That is the approach.
Right.
That is the approach. First of all, you have to make sure that you understand all the processes, Mohammed, because there might be a lot of things that you might not be aware about. Trust me on that. Okay. So there might be a lot of things in IT department, or let's say any department, that you might not be aware about. So first of all, speak to the people, have one-on-one meetings, regular catch-ups, try to speak as much as you can, gather data, collate data, send an MOM, keep a document of everything. Okay. Then go for asset classification. Try to see what are the critical things that if lost or if not available, will crash that particular process and the business will go hayway. Okay. So then think about that, and from that do risk assessment, as Akshay rightly mentioned.
Yeah, and is it good to do the gap analysis first?
Absolutely. See, first thing is understanding the processes. Once you get a gist of all the things, you can do anything. You can go for gap assessment, you can go for risk analysis. Rest all things will later fall into the plate. Don't go for them initially, otherwise you will hit your foot in the mud.
Okay, I have the available. I have the list of all the critical services we have right now.
I have available all the list of assets that we are currently using in the IT department.
No, but have you had a chance to sit with the people?
Not right now. Not right now.
Don't go with the documents then, man. You have to sit with the people, right, Akshay? You have to spend
Okay.
time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Without
So
that.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it makes more sense. I mean, what do you need to achieve is the key here, man. I mean, are you talking about a procedure or a process perspective, or you're talking about something that is operational? Because both the things go hand in hand. So if you are if you're handed over the security function and you're acting like a CISO or a BISO for that matter, I think it makes more sense for you to, if you're saying nothing is defined, then I think the very first thing you need to understand is that you have to start a process and then you have to start certain activities.
Yeah.
So while your ISMS, let's say you say that I'm going to establish an ISMS function.
Okay.
So while you are doing establishing an ISMS function, so one starting point, and I'm not saying this is the starting point, one starting point could be identifying what assets are exposed to the internet.
Okay.
Right? What servers are directly exposed to the internet? Do they have firewall in place? Have firewall reviewed whether it's actually the firewall rule set is robust or not? Right? Make sure that network segmentation is there. You need to make sure that which servers are in DMZ, which is the user segment, which is private segment, which is public segment. So are those segmentations in place? So you may need to have a network architecture security review in place. But that's something that happens at a later stage. The very first thing is to make sure that you are protected from external threats. Then you can also side by side there is it's a continuous process. Security is a continuous process. You can't in one go. Theoretically we feel that everything can be done, but practically it's a challenge. If you're starting something from scratch, especially, it's going to be very difficult for you. But yes, if you start with a cool head and you approach this, you have you have an approach in which one way you're creating documents and policies, but a document is just that, a document. It's a practice that you have to establish. You have to start with user awareness. You have to talk to people. As somebody in the group long time back already said that they were going through something in the same fashion, and what I suggested to them was something like this, that you go ahead and you talk to people, you inform them, you have awareness sessions, you have trainings. You talk to them about tailgating, you talk to them about not sharing their passwords, you talk to them about not storing passwords in desktops. Then you go ahead and you review the current policy. I mean, even if there is no information security in place, there's no security function, but people are still following information security, because if there is an AD, then people are still required to enter passwords. So why not just go ahead and just analyze what is currently there, and then where you go from there. You may call it a gap analysis. Yes, I would agree. You can say that this is a preliminary gap analysis, just identifying what is there and what is not there, and then just improving as you go. And meanwhile, also making sure that you are implement. So there is nobody that tells you that once you publish a policy, it cannot be updated. And there is nobody that tells you that when you publish a policy, it should be like the best policy that you could ever make. No, that's not true. You start from the bottom. You make a couple of policies. You start from there and you keep adding on it. You don't have to publish it immediately. You don't have to, you can consult specialist for that matter. But if you want to do it, protecting your external asset is a good starting point. Defining very basic principles, because let's say you just say that I am password management is something I'm going to address. So now what you need to do is you need to talk to everybody or every application owner or even your AD team, whoever is enforcing passwords to be used within your organization, you have to talk to. So that will be your application owner, that will be your AD team, and then you can review that and you can say that, is there a trend being followed? And then you float them an emailer and tell them, this is the password policy that you need to enforce. So there you go. Now you have made sure that wherever a password is being enforced, they are following whatever, you have as a recommendation. And then you just keep on building over that. So it's just one step over the other. Does that make sense?
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks for these suggestions.
Thank you. Yeah. What's the next one?
Yeah, the next question is by Sachin. He says that if firewall Active Directory log is not maintained and backup is not taken, I think this is a single point of failure. I am not able to put it under which control I should put NC in audit. Logging, insufficient logging and backup.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty straightforward, man. Wherever there is no logging or backup, you can straight away put this under, insufficient logging and backup.
Okay, which control number it is I have to put under?
From ISO, so I am sorry, I do not remember if you're talking about ISO 27001 control.
Yeah. Right.
I'm sorry, man. I do not remember the exact control. Maybe I can search it for you and share it with you.
Yeah. Actually, I searched it a lot, but I couldn't trace it properly. So
not a problem. I will do that for you.
Yeah.
I'll make sure you get that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The next question is from Yuvraj. He says, kindly addressed how organizations are getting ready for new data privacy law in addition to IT Act expected to get passed this year in India, and is any pre-laid process going on for this already? As I got to know through a webinar that law is more demanding from organization than GDPR. How this legal requirement how is the legal requirement changing the face of InfoSec in Indian organization? Wow, man. The answer to this question itself is, a webinar. Yuvraj, are you there? Yuvraj, I would like to talk to you here.
Hi, Luv.
Hi.
Akshay.
Hi, man. Very nice question, yeah. I mean, which webinar? What was the topic? I mean, can you just tell me about what that was? Because it's a question. It's very good.
He's a chairman of data privacy.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You can just tell me what was the webinar about. I mean, I'm more interested.
Webinar is about data privacy law, which is going to be imposed in India, maybe in the next or current year, based on the situation. Now they have prepared the bill. Now it's in the stage of a bill. They're telling that we are expecting to place the bill in the parliament as soon as possible.
Okay.
But the more important thing is the fines. When the data is leaked, the fine is going to be huge amount, like in crores, 5 crore, 20 crore, based upon the amount of data or criticality. There will be council to audit. There will be auditors, management auditors to oversee the external auditors. Now we are going for external auditor, right? To check the integrity of those auditors, there will be a management board that will be set up to look into how they are operating. So when I attend the webinar, it will be like it will shift the entire InfoSec into a different perspective where data privacy comes first.
Okay. Yes, very rightly said. So, see, first of all, I would like to address a couple of points to what you said. One thing is that data privacy should always be a concern. When we are talking about end user and consumer, it should always have been a concern. But
can I have a word?
Sorry?
Can I have a word?
Yeah, sure.
I understand the thing. We are following data privacy. That's all fine. We are even most organizations are already implemented GDPR. The thing is, when you are not going to decide incidents, when there is an incident, they will impose fine that will affect business. How the infosec stringent will infosec and the auditee and the auditor their procedures, how they are implementing standards, legal things, compliance requirements, how these things will become stringent in the infosec view. That's what I want to have.
Sir, can I answer this?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Hi. So, from the privacy law perspective, so first, I'll want to give you a bit of background that how privacy law came into picture. So, in August 2017, there was a case between Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India, which validated that right to privacy qualifies under the fundamental right, which is Article 21. Further to this, right now, our Information Technology Act, which is already there, is a very old act. And there is a lot of drastic change which has happened because European Union, the UK moved out of the European Union. So earlier they were following Data Protection Act 1996. So they had their own GDPR. And, US also had their own improvised privacy law. So when it comes to India, the penalties were very, very bleak or very limited. So right now, the Ministry of Information Technology has written to all different ministries, and it is also open to public that if they have any feedback or anything they want to get it changed from a draft perspective, they can participate. So, earlier there was not stringent punishment under Information Technology Act 2000. Then, there was a second amendment that happened in 2008. So right now, the privacy will be clubbed under the Information Technology Act, wherein, there will be severe penalties on the companies. So to add it further, earlier, the companies law which we had, which was made in 1956, 2013, there was a first amendment, and till date, there is a lot of amendments happening. So privacy was a new concept in India, right? In Information Technology Act, we did not capture it. But now the world is talking about privacy, right? Sites are talking about privacy. So now the Indian government is more concerned about the data. Another example is that earlier our transaction data was going out of India. So then RBI gave a strict instruction to all the companies that any data which has a financial transaction, the mirror and the replication copies to be kept only within the physical boundaries of India. So this is how, it is shaping, because there is a lot of petition that is going to Supreme Court on a privacy front.
In addition to that, will our Indian organizations having any pre-laid plan or procedures going underneath as a forecasting method, seeing data privacy law, maybe expecting?
Yeah, so to answer it, in a more elaborative way, ISO standards are governed globally. So there is one part which talks in ISO standard is the compliance with the local laws of land.
Yes.
So whenever you are implementing any ISMS, right, it talks about the local governance. So if, there are changes in the law, right, your company secretary will have to abide by those laws.
Yes.
Because if the company turnover is greater than 10 crore, then, it is a moral responsibility and ethical responsibility of the company secretary because he's a signing authority.
Yeah.
Then next coming to picture is the director, because the DIN, Director Information number is with the government. So there are, apart from the ISO, there are regulatory compliances which come into picture.
Yeah.
So very soon the government of India will start asking for the filing of the privacy on the website.
Yeah. Does it answer your question, Yuvraj? I think Satwinder has very well answered it.
Okay, fine that part. The other part is there is any framework? There is any framework?
No, Yuvraj. There is no framework. I think I know what you're trying to look for. And thank you, Satvinder, for answering. Let me answer your question specifically. What you are saying is there any guideline? Can I prepare? Can I refer to something and become quickly compliant to the new data protection bill that is going to be passed? So, right?
Even they will very well say it may take 6 months to 1 year to even to implement, show us that something we are doing. For that case itself, that person told it may take about 6 months to 1 year. The thing is, there is a new position called Chief Data Privacy Officer.
Yes.
Like okay, so let me address you a little bit on what you are saying. See, I don't agree with your opinion that, or like you said that, this is very different from GDPR. No, I think the data protection bill shares a couple of points or has derived a couple of points from GDPR as a standard.
Yes.
It talks about, data ownership. It talks about data privacy. It talks about user consent. It talks about data classification. It talks about, data sovereignty.
Yes.
So I don't think it's very different from GDPR. Yes, because it's local to India. This is for us. So obviously there will be difference from a European standard. I agree to that.
The thing, once again, we know the difference, right? Different from a standard to framework to a legal point. Now it's
Yuvraj,
going to be
you need to let me first explain. Let me say what I want to say, and then maybe you can ask what you wish to ask. So right. So like I was saying that it's a data protection or data privacy bill, right? So it talks about data privacy. So it's there basically speaking, like Satvinder rightly said, that we did not recognize data privacy as something that we should have in our IT Act, or we should be a matter of concern. So we are talking about data privacy as a fundamental right of everybody. So every citizen, after this bill passes, can go ahead and say that I have the right to privacy. So there is a governing body here that says that, under the DPB, I can say that, I have the right to privacy. Anybody and right now, what was happening was, as long as, we are not being called out, all data collection, data mining companies, sales companies, marketing companies could, gather any kind of data from you and then pass it off as, in terms of legal things and kind of try to, escape from any legal ramifications.
Yes.
What this is aiming to do partly, it's not just that, it's aiming to do partly is to assure a user that, whatever data you have, you're providing, you have the right to consent, you have the right to, agree to providing that data or not.
Yes.
So if somebody is now asking for your data, they can't just blindly ask it. They can say that, you have to, do you want to provide this data to us? Even if it's a 3-point survey or it's a full-fledged marketing campaign, everybody has to now ask for your consent for your user data. It may seem like a very small point, or it may seem like an obvious thing for somebody to do, but people did not used to do because there wasn't a government mandated regulation around this. So that is one aspect to it. I mean, obviously the DPB is a whole huge thing, and I would not like to discuss everything right here. So that is one point here. Other point is also, and I'm just adding to what Satvinder is saying, that where is data residing here? Data classification. So if from your question perspective, if I have to prepare for DPB, I will make sure that my data, or the kind of data that my organization is processing is classified into critical, sensitive and general. That is what DPB states. DPB states that you have to classify data into 3 categories. Then it goes ahead and says that the critical data has to sit in India. You have to make sure that the critical data is residing in India. So first you have to decide, you have to read the law, you have to say that, does my data qualify as a critical data? This is not a critical data according to your policy. No, this is a critical data as mandated and defined by the DPB, which is similar to the PHI and PII.
Yeah.
So we have to go into the finer lines here. Then it goes ahead and it says that the sensitive data can be processed outside but still has to stay in India, and there is no regulation against general. So yes, so I think the very first thing, your framework, if you and I were to sit together and make a framework here, it would be that classify your data. Data classification is one thing, right? So that could be one, and then this addresses specific sectors and industries in different ways, because when it says if you have already been in that and if you've read it talks about something called as a verification tag. So any organization that is storing user information or that is processing user information must also tag the user.
Yes.
And the one thing that they're trying to address is trolling. So you have to understand trolling is a concern here, and when this was formed, bots and trolls are addressed through this so that you can verify a person, whether a person accessing your platform or posting in your platform is not a bot and a valid person. So now this is not, although an organization has to do it, this is addressing a general concern of, accidents or how I should put this is the suicides or depressions that were going on people trolling people on social media and on those platforms. So yes, it becomes a challenge. Yes. So this is a coding part of it, right? Or this is an implementation part of it. There is a tagging that has to be done. So a certain level of things have to be done at a database level or at a data store level. Certain level of things have to be done programmatically. So this is on that. Then when we discuss about data sovereignty addresses citizens in general. It talks about that, when the nation's interest comes into picture, then the government has right to look into certain data that is in certain cases is not supposed to be looked into.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously we need to read more on this. We need to understand more on this. But so it addresses different sects and cultures. But people and domains. But yes, it does talk about data privacy in general. So it is similar to GDPR. And yes, there are fines and there should be fines. But in like GDPR, in any kind of implementation or in any kind of audit, or when a data protection bill or an act comes into place, it happens in a phased manner. People are given leeways, and we should expect something like this. But yes, what we can do is we can try to figure out frameworks around the data protection bill that is already there. I don't think it's impossible. Yes, it's going to be a challenge because all these terms are very new. We do not know what these imply, what this means, and since this is not established, there will always be gray areas. But yeah, I think it's good that we are coming up with something because we haven't had something like this for a while. Does this answer your question? And now you can ask any follow-up question.
Yeah. There is a second part of the question. One next in that inbox. When it's in when it comes,
let me check.
Fine.
Okay, just two more sentences on this. So
Please.
When we talk about privacy in India, how it all started? It all started when government passed an order that all Aadhaar cards to be linked with the phone numbers and the banks. So then people went to Supreme Court and said that linking our Aadhaar card, which has a biometric, is a violation of the privacy because we were not ready. Now we say that the framework will be ready. No, it will not be ready as of now because we are using digital locker, right? To make digital locker more effective, they have to make changes to different legislation like the Motor Vehicle Act, because Motor Vehicle Act did not permit acceptance of the digital documents. So now they have made changes to the Motor Vehicle Act, which is again a very old 1987, 1986 year. It was written 1986 and 87. So slowly and steadily we will have a framework, but I do not see any framework coming up in next 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can address Yuvraj's next question here itself. Because we are in that flow and we can address the other questions after this. I think what he asks is any particular list of documents to verify during audit to check compliance level of legal requirements. of land with respect to particular processes, including data from different nation citizen being processed in India. If you can explain this, because it's a long.
No, I'll explain in a very operational manner.
Yes.
Take a process where we involving data processing of includes data of persons from different countries, but they are we process those data. How you verify? You will ask for to check requirements.
Okay, which audit are you talking about? What kind of an audit are you facing?
ISMS.
ISMS audit does not mandate you to verify these things. I don't think so. I'm sure Luv can answer.
Yeah, fine.
So I'm not able to clear the question yet because it was very long one. Yuvraj, can you explain?
Okay.
Sorry, come again.
Yeah. Fine. It's my problem. There is a process where we sit up in India. We are processing data for different nations. That's the thing. And now there is some legal requirements for our land for different countries, right?
Yes.
Yes. With respect to that, if you sit for auditing of that particular process, what are the requirements you will ask to see the legal compliance?
Okay. So first of all, you have to understand how exactly the data is flowing. Where are the different locations? What type of data is flowing to those locations? Does that data include any privacy information? Does that includes any personal data? What kind of data is there? Okay, you have to classify it initially. And I think the main point of concern would be where the data is stored. Okay, I think those regions or those country laws will prevail.
Yuvraj, I think Love, you're right. If you're trying to ask whether if I'm an Indian organization and I'm storing data in India of people who are of outside origin, what kind of other compliances come into picture when I'm establishing an ISMS?
Legal compliance.
Legal, right?
Yeah.
So. Okay, so I think Satvinder rightly said that you need to comply with national regulations. So I think that's if you're talking from a PII perspective, I think you can store information, but then obviously data privacy comes into picture. If you are processing, European data information, GDPR might come into picture over here. But other than that, from a legal standpoint, I don't know. I don't think so, because the legal penalty comes from the compliance itself. So I don't understand fully when we say legal, what exactly you're trying to ask.
Sir, can I answer this?
Yeah, go for it.
So considering, first, Luv and Akshay rightly said that we need to understand what is the data type. So, for example, if data qualifies for insurance sector,
yes.
So let's take an example of a US. So if you are storing US citizen data that qualifies for insurance, there are two things that comes into picture. One, you need to be HIPAA compliant because data is governed and regulated by HIPAA. Second, there are other state acts. Like for California, we have a California State Consumer Act, California Privacy Act.
Right.
So you need to first segregate what kind of data it is, right? If it qualifies for PII, personal identifiable information, then there are the second controls that come into picture. That what are the controls for that country. So for example, for HIPAA, right, if you're a US citizen and it's a PII or PHI data, that's personal health identifiable information, so you cannot bring it outside the physical boundaries of US.
Yes.
You can only virtually access it. Yeah. So these are the some other regulatory compliances that comes into picture. If the data is for US or for Canada, right, the local laws of land will come into picture first.
Yes.
Right.
Understood, Yuvraj?
Yeah, fine.
Perfect. Good question, huh?
Okay.
Good. Yeah.
I think we'll quickly move on to the next question. I think, Love, this is in your forte. Is implementing ISO 27001 an important part to learn about standard before going for an audit? Also, in terms of learning and best practice, is implementing ISO 27001 important before going for an audit?
Who has asked this?
Kaustubh.
Kaustubh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate now. Go. Okay, I'll answer this. Don't worry. I've got some background.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Good question, huh? Obviously, I mean the answer is there in your question only, man. You should do an internal audit, or have a hands-on on the implementation and auditing before going to audit any other client or any other customer. Otherwise, how would you check whether the compliance is there or not? Gap assessment, risk assessment should have to be done by you. It is a tedious job. I completely imagine that in your circumstances, but it has to be done, man. No other way.
Okay.
Okay.
I think second part of his question was, is implementing ISO 27001 important before
Yes,
going for audit?
absolutely.
I mean, obviously, man.
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
haven't implemented it, what are you going to audit against?
Yeah. And
I mean, ultimately,
I'll add a couple of things, Kaustubh, just for your reference, because this will help other people also who are watching this video later on. Depends upon the industry, depend upon the type of organization, the nature of work that you will be going through. There are n number of case studies on Google. If you will go through, you can see how people have done it, what are the different constraints out there, what are the different challenges that people have gone through. You don't have to start the reinventing the wheel again. There already people have done it. Just go through the research and just read on Google. I think if you will spend 2 hours for 3 to 4 days understanding how people have done this implementation and audits, you will find n number of resources on Google. So you don't have to worry or to start from the scratch. There is nothing. If you start those case studies first, understand what are the constraints that people have faced. Okay, if you'll ask me, that is the first thing I would do. Typical to your sector, which sector are you trying to implement this into? Okay, go back and reverse engineer what kind of challenges people faced, what kind of constraints were there, what stopped them from auditing. Okay, so yeah, these are the things that I would go through first before doing it myself also, because I want to understand what are the challenges that people have already faced in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add a little bit to this, Kaustubh, because I was, when we started in information security, I was a technical person. So there is from a technical infosec guy, there is always a myth or a fear against the processes and policies. And people are always afraid. Oh, this is ISO work. Oh, we don't know this. We are technical people. We are VAPT guys. So I got into this in pretty much the same way. I was part of an audit. The very first time I got introduced to ISMS was that there was an ISO audit going on, internal audit, and I just kind of I'll just be an observer. I'll just stand there and I'll just see what is happening. And that is how I came to know. So the best way to learn is to actually be a part of something operational.
Yeah.
You can gather information or knowledge. You can know about all clauses. You don't need to be able to you don't need to have it on your tape, but you need to understand the concept. You first need to understand how it's being done operationally. One of the challenges that I see is that people treat this standard so much as a Bible or so much as a reference point that they kind of forget that this is actually meant to be operationalized. So people talk a lot about exact controls, people talk a lot about exact clauses, and then they forget, or they actually have a confusion as to how this actually relates in a practical manner. In the last Q&A, I think that this is it's a little different. Standard like a PCI or standard like an ISO is GDPR, and this I think they were talking about. It's a little different because ISO generally defines an ISMS. It does not say anything specific. It just tells you to have a security management system in place. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and I think for that matter, like Luv said, it's specific to organization. You need to understand what domain you are in, what industry you're in, and just start an audit. I mean, just do it. and this is how you'll be able to learn more about it.
Yeah, actually the same thing happened. I recently joined an organization. I've just completed my master's, so I recently joined an organization. So on the
Sure.
second day, they sent me for an audit. So for an I told me that I am new to this. At least give me a senior so that I can shadow him. I get to learn, I get to see things how people think, how to do an audit. He
Right.
told me that you know high strength and you have good knowledge about it. You can go for it. So कुछ issues आए थे तो.
No, I understand, and no, but see, I obviously you will have issues, you will have problems. If there is something very specific to that audit that you find some issues, why not go ahead and ask? Some obviously not really revealing sensitive information. Just talk about it. Maybe we can address some couple of points here.
Actually, I already asked the questions like how should I know that the evidence that they are showing is genuine? Like, okay, that is the only evidence that I have to see for that.
So one thing that we do when we audit, what we do is that we ask for more proof. So if somebody says that I have enabled that authentication, you ask them for a screenshot, or you sit with them on the screen and you make sure that that has been done and is in practice.
Yeah, right.
So there are two ways. Let's say somebody says, I'll give you a very small example that will not be relevant to your company, but let's say they say that we have enabled two-factor authentication. There are two ways of verifying whether there is two-factor authentication enabled or not. One thing is to check it from the console or the server. Second is to actually make somebody log in and check whether they are being asked for a second layer of authentication or not. That totally depends on you. That is how good or flexible a standard ISO is. That it does not really tell you that you have to do this and this only then you will be able to audit or you will be able to get compliant. So you can demand for any number of evidences and they have to give it to you as an auditor.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Also, Kaustubh, to add to that, try understanding some case studies of the sector in which you are auditing. That will help you a lot.
Okay.
Go on Google and type case study, and after that type the sector that you want to do the audit in, and after that put audit and add ISO 27001. It will give you all the case studies.
I think these are the only questions.
Okay, love.
Okay. Any other questions before we conclude?
That will be all from my side.
Okay. Any other person? Any other questions?
I think somebody's typing. Let's wait.
Okay. Very good session. I am really happy. A lot of good questions came up. Good.
Sir, me too.
Yeah.
Me too, sir. Every session that
Me
comes
too.
with a lot of learning for me.
Yeah. Satwinder, you are teaching us a lot, man. Come on.
No, sir. See, I consider you as my Guruji.
No.
So if for me, you are always a Guruji.
Yeah.
Because I have learned a lot from you.
Yeah. See, learning is always, I believe, two ways, man. Some things I also might not know, and Akshay might also not know. So that's where we need to collaborate, right? That's why these platforms are. But thank you, Satwinder.
I think there are no more questions here.
Okay. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Go on, Sachin.
Hello. Yeah. Actually, I was preparing documentation for one company. So for the audit purpose, I am preparing the documentation. So what I was finding difficult to prepare the evidences against each and every control. So is there any standard so that against each and every control I will save the particular evidence and keep the documentation ready for the audit?
Are you trying to ask is there? I mean, I'm sorry, I could hear you. I think what you're asking is against specific audit points, you want to understand how to prepare evidences.
Right. If there is any particular control, the auditor may ask some question that what is the evidence that you have with you. So there are some controls that the language is not I couldn't understand the language mentioned in the controls. So I don't
Can you tell us some specific controls? Any specific control that you found a challenge with?
Just 1 minute.
Or maybe Sachin, what we can do here is, since we are running a little low on time, maybe in the next session or in our groups, you can ask some this question in a specific control format. Because to answer your first question, there is no specific way of presenting an evidence against a control.
Yeah.
If you can just say that this is in place and this is and you can justify it against a control, the auditor will be happy.
Okay.
So if a control says that that the cryptographic mechanism should be in place, if you can showcase that there is in fact cryptography in place, you can showcase data encrypted, you can showcase encryption solution in place, you can show so all of these evidences work. So there is no specific way of doing it. If you are finding a challenge to understand a couple of controls and how evidence can be presented against that, maybe you can prepare a list and either ask in the next Q&A session or in the group.
No problem. I will answer this question. Cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the.
Thank you. And thank you so much for joining everyone then. I think it's been a lot of time now. So as Akshay mentioned, we will have another session for tomorrow, and Akshay will send you the time and details of that meeting, how we will have. And that will be entirely on the BCP and incident management, right, Akshay?
Yeah, so we'll talk about BCP, we'll talk about incident management, we'll also cover considering current scenarios, and we'll be open to question and answers during that time.
Yeah.
We will try to keep it specific to BCP and IM because it's a very specific session. If since you guys are already present here and so you get the first call, what is the time that is preferred to you guys?
So I think the
Anytime.
same time 9:30 is good.
Okay, and anybody else? Any other preferred time?
You can type
Sorry?
on chat. You're not audible. You can type on chat.
Today's timing is okay.
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 Same timing. Yeah, I think most of the people are going for same timing.
7 to 8, huh? Somebody said 7 to 8.
Okay.
Okay. I think we'll let us start at 9. I think, Akshay. 9 o'clock is fine.
Yeah, I think nine seems like a good
Yeah.
time. 9:30 becomes a little late because now as discussions happen, they seem to stretch a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe we can start 8:39.
Yeah.
Probably.
8:30.
We can decide that.
8:30 is better.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My suggestion is you can ask others to get ready with the questions so that they no need to type again and again. They all can prepare the questions beforehand and they can ask you at the same time, one by one. So you can also follow a sequence of the questions.
Actually, for a Q&A session, that is the point. I mean, you don't come to a Q&A session without a question. But yeah, it could be a little much to expect people to who do not have much idea about BCP and IM to have questions prepared. And I think, the people who already have questions, it makes sense. But yes, we'll make sure we ask people to, have any questions that they have prepared beforehand.
Yeah. Or make the questions ready. Right, Satwinder?
Yeah.
Good, huh? Thank you so much for joining, everyone. I really enjoyed the session. Right, Akshay?
Same as sir. One promise is pending from your side. Once the lockdown gets over, we have to, get sit down for a cup of coffee.
Oh
which
my
is due
God.
Since 2019.
I do you still remember that coffee cup, man?
Yeah. Sir, I still remember.
Okay. No worries. Let us all first of all be safe and sound after this all is over. Then surely I'll call Akshay from Mumbai also for that coffee. Don't worry.
That would be great, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Sure, man. Thank you so much for joining, everyone.
Okay.
It was great.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Take care. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Stay
Bye-bye.
safe.
Yeah. Bye bye.